and welcome back to the third episode of my tutorial series. In this episode, we are going to actually set up a character now with this rig. We're going to be smoothing out the model, and I'm going to show you guys how to attach armor pieces to the joints and such. So let's go ahead and get started. I already have a character that I'll be using set up in WoW Model Viewer. This includes all of his features, his armor, everything like that. And once you have your character fully geared up, you're going to want to again come down here and put them in the face pose animation. And this basically sets all the gear into a, it's more like a V pose than a T pose, but it'll make things very easy for attaching these items to the rig that we have. So once it's in this position, we're going to want to go up to File, Export Model, and this time we're going to click OBJ instead of FBX. And once you export it, this is the only window that pops up. So now we're going to swap over to Cinema 4D. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is make sure to have a copy of this rig. You want to save this as a copy because we actually want to keep this rig as its own separate file because you're going to be reusing this for pretty much any character that goes with this model. So once you have a copy of this saved, we're going to go up to File and we're going to click on Merge, and we're going to merge the OBJ file we just exported from WoW Model Viewer. And once you merge that, this window is going to pop up. If you want, you can just copy all my settings here, and then we're going to click OK. So usually when you merge OBJs, they tend to start off a lot smaller than FBX files for some reason. Usually the way to fix this is to click on the top null of the OBJ, and where it has the scale coordinates right here, we're just going to replace these ones with 50. And that'll bring it to the exact size that we need it. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to move this to the side, and we're going to only delete the body mesh, and we're going to keep the armor pieces. Usually the way you can tell is in the name, it'll say item or character, and you want to delete all the names with character in it. And if you want to check if it's an armor piece or not, again, just move it around. Don't worry about these gloves here because we can actually enable these with this rig. So you just want to focus on the actual armor pieces right here that are not attached to the body. So we're just going to go ahead and delete all that. And then we're going to go down here to Function, remove unused materials, and then remove duplicate materials. Alright, and that cleans it up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and clean out these materials a bit just to see which is which. So this would be the belt. So we have our gear. We're just going to leave this to the side for now because right now we want to go ahead and hide all of these options and import our actual textures. So where we organized our extras, we're going to go ahead and turn off the visibility on both the editor and the renderer. And you can also do this by having the extra selected, going to the basic tab, and where it says visible in editor and visible in renderer, you want to turn both of those off. Once all of that is hidden, we're going to go ahead and go into the body mesh, the base body mesh, and what we want to do is we want to disable or basically delete all the facial hair and eyebrows and faces that we're not going to be using. Again, this is very important that you have this saved as a copy because, you know, once you delete something, you can't get it back. So if you delete these from your main rig that you'll be reusing, you'll be extremely limited. So just make sure to make a copy. We basically want to go over here and go into the polygon mode. And we're going to double click things that we don't need. And this will take some getting used to. So the character that I'm using, as you can see, he doesn't have any eyebrow models. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of these eyebrows. Just double click and delete. Alright. As for the beards, again, he doesn't have any facial hair, so we don't have to worry about that. And actually, an easier way to do this is to go into this list here, and we want to scroll to the side until we see these polygon triangles. And we can actually double click these to easier select the entire section of the mesh. Because these aren't smoothed, sometimes it'll only select like one side of a section. So we're just gonna select these by using the triangles. And for now, because I don't know exactly what face this is, with this selected, I'm gonna go over here to where it says hide selected, and that'll just hide it, and we'll be able to unhide it later. Make sure to not delete any of the body parts right down here. We just want to focus on the actual face. So again, we're gonna hide that. All right, as we can see here, this is actually not the face shape that we want now that the other two are hidden, because I am using the round face shape, and this is the narrow face shape. So we're gonna go ahead and double click on that, and then we're gonna hit delete. I also like to bring my mouse over to the actual polygon tags and delete the one that's selected. Let's go ahead and unhide the faces that we have just to see. All right, so if I'm not mistaken, yeah, so that's the other one we don't want. So I'm just gonna go ahead and delete, and this is the one that we want. We're just gonna keep going down the board because we want to disable the facial hair. I will be using another model later with facial hair just to show you guys why I have it attached to the base. But for now, we're just going to disable all of these. Don't want to disable the ears. Can't remember which tag this is, so I'm just gonna spam delete as much as I can. I'm actually going to, I have an easier thing that I can do. So I'm actually going to select the entire body and just hide it. And the way I'm doing this is I'm holding down shift and double clicking, because when you hold down shift, that selects multiple things. And if you hold control while clicking, it unselects things. So again, we're gonna go over here to hide selected. It's weird that that is not a part of the hands. We wanna make sure we get everything a part of the body. We do not wanna delete something that we need by accident. So again, hide all of these. Oops. If this is your first time doing this, I recommend going very slow, much slower than I am, and just making sure, honestly, saving several copies as well if you need to. It's a lot. Okay. I think I have everything. So now that all of that's hidden, I'm going to do Control A, and that's going to select whatever's left, and then delete. And then to show everything, once again, we're gonna click this icon which says unhide all. All right, so we have a clean slate here. Let's ignore this random texturing issue. I think I accidentally deleted a material tag or something. That's fine, it's no biggie. So speaking of materials, I'm actually going to click and drag and delete all of these materials here, because we're about to replace the materials anyway. So once all of that is cleared, we now get to optimize and smooth our model so we can get rid of these pesky seams here. And one thing to note is if you have exported a night elf or just any elf that has, you know, the long ears, obviously, I believe I put a note in my first video to export all the ear types with this base. The reason for that is because what we're about to do is, again, optimize, which means smooth the model. And if you export the ears separately with like the extras, like the hair and everything, it's actually going to keep the seam between the ear and the head right here. So that is why it's important to export all the ear types because they're supposed to be attached to the head, and they're supposed to be like a smooth transition between the ear and the head. And if you don't do that, then I don't know how to personally get rid of a seam created by that problem. So alright, so what we're gonna do is, first things first, before we optimize him, we want to open his eyes and open his mouth. And the reason for that is because optimizing, essentially, it smooths out the model, makes it look nicer, and sometimes points can get caught with each other and merged, and usually that can happen with corners of the mouth or the eyelids if the points are too close. So I always open the eyes first and open the mouth first. One thing we want to do before we move anything, this is actually very important, I actually like to freeze the position of all of the joints, so that way if we ever mess with the body, the pose, whatever, we can actually just press a button to reset to this position whenever we need it. So I'm going to click this top constraint right here, and we're going to click the select children button, and then we're going to go into coordinates, go down to freeze transformation, and then freeze all. And as you can see here, these are not 0. For whatever reason, whenever I'm working with arm or leg pulls, for some reason it sometimes makes the things wonky, but just know that these are, everything under this is frozen, all the coordinates. So now, just to give you an example, let's just move him around a little bit. Just make something very cursed.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no.
So let's just say, oh, you fudged up. You created this monstrosity and you don't know how to get back. What you can do is you can select everything, and then you'll go up to this button here that says reset PSR, and that takes him back to the frozen position that we have him in. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and open his eyes and his mouth. And we're just gonna open these, and then we're going to open his mouth, just select the jaw, and we're just gonna rotate it open like that. One thing to note with elves, again, this is 100% from experience, always make sure to have one set of ears on the character. So like I deleted the beard and like the additional faces, you want to make sure to do that, because if you don't and you optimize the model, points are going to stick together. So it's very important to have, one face type actually on the model, one ear type on the model, and everything else, every other type, deleted. So now what we're gonna do, once we have the eyes and the jaw open, we're going to select the body mesh, and we're gonna go to this tag here. It's the weight expression tag. We're gonna click on that, and we're gonna go down here where it says set bind pose. We're gonna hold shift and click on that. And what that does is, once we go into polygon mode, it saves the pose that the character is in as the, I guess, editable state, you could say. And this will basically save the position of the jaw or the mouth, the eyelids, everything like that. All right, once you do that, again, you want to make sure we have this polygon object selected. And we're going to go up to mesh up here, commands, optimize, and we're going to click this little setting icon right next to it. All right, so usually it starts out with this already put in. I actually like to add an additional 0 to basically decrease the chances of points getting merged together. I'm pretty sure this is the smallest you can go, and I haven't had any issues when I put this number in. So yeah, just make sure all of these are checked and this tolerance is like this, and then we're gonna hit OK. As you can see here, it did something kind of. So now what we're gonna wanna do is, with the mesh still selected, we're gonna go down here to the Fong tab, and I like to set my Fong angle to 90 because sometimes too smooth makes things look worse. And the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to reset the position of the jaw. I personally like to keep the eyes open, so I'm actually going to freeze them in this position now. So eyelid top and that one, and we're gonna go to coordinates and then freeze all. And the last thing we're gonna do is select the mesh of the body, go back into the weight expression tab, and then we're going to shift click the set bind pose again. And now it's gonna save it in this, this state. So we're gonna go ahead and load in our textures now on this character, and then I'm gonna continue the process of smoothing out the model. All right, so first things first, I'm going to add these to a new layer for now, just to get those out of the way. And we're gonna go into the no layers, and when we exported our WoW character from WoW Model Viewer as an OBJ, it actually exports the textures that come with it. So we're gonna go ahead and import those one by one in this material window right here. So one way to do that is you can either click and drag the images over here from a separate window, or you can double click in here to create a new material, double click the material, and then I always disable reflectance where it says color and then texture. You're going to want to click on these three dots and then open up the first material. Once you select your first texture, this window is going to pop up. I always select no because we don't really need a copy as long as you know where it's at. So I'm going to select no for now. And the first material that I have is the body. So I'm just going to rename this to body, and we'll actually do /armor. Oops. Armor. One way you can apply the material is you can actually just click and drag it over your body, but as you can see, it applies it to everything attached to the mesh. So we're not going to do it that way. What we're going to do is we're going to go into polygon mode, and we actually just want to hide the eyes first because these are a separate material. So we're just going to hide these for now. Again, hide selected. And if you have any beards or eyebrows, you'll also want to hide those. So now what we're going to want to do is do Control A while you're still in polygon mode. And we can click and drag this material over what we have selected. And then we're going to unhide all and go back into our object mode. By the way, I always like to stay in this object mode right here, but chances are you might be in model mode. The reason why I like to stay in object mode is because when you're scaling things, like for example, if you want to scale your character to make them taller or shorter, you actually want to be in object mode for that, because if you do it in model mode, it's going to basically severely deform them. I always like to stay in object mode. The way you can change that is clicking and dragging to this menu right here. You just want to hold your click down. So now that we have our body material on here, we want to make some adjustments. So first of all, as you can see here, the quality of the texture is not very good. So what we want to do is we can actually either do it from here or we can do it from down here. With this texture selected, you just want to go over to texture preview size, and you can actually change it. I always change it to no scaling, and that basically gives you the full quality of your texture. So I'm going to go ahead and import the rest of my textures, including the armor, and I'm going to speed through this part. Alright, so as we can see here, all of the textures are now applied for the most part, but what we want to do now, we want to enable all of the custom options for this character now. So I actually have WoW Model Viewer open in a separate screen for me, so I can go off of what the character is supposed to look like. So we're going to go over here to our extras, and first we're going to show the hairstyle that we want. So again, we can do this by going down these little circles right here and clicking on them. So first one is definitely not what we want, so we're gonna hide that again. This is also not what we want. Here it is. All right, so once you find the hairstyle that your character is supposed to have, you want to make sure both of these circles are green, and I always like to move it to the top of this list right here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete this texture tag right here, and we're going to drag the actual texture it's supposed to have right there. So we're going to go ahead and minimize the hair, and this character actually also has a cloak. His cloak is the long one, so we're going to go ahead and find that. And if you end up wanting to change up things like how they look, you can do that here because let me just click and drag this. You can also just replace the texture tag by clicking and dragging this this material onto the tag where this little plus sign shows up. While this cloak initially comes in this style, you can actually mess with things if you want, and if you want it to be like a different shape or whatever. It's probably not going to look good like this, but you can mess with it like so. But we're gonna go ahead and just go with the long cloak because that's the best one. Last but not least, we're gonna enable the armor. We definitely want to enable the tabard. And again, we're going to apply our texture to everything like so. All right, so we also want to optimize these armor pieces right here and these as well. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. One nice thing is once you go up to the mesh commands, oh wait, I should probably select one first. Mesh commands, optimize, and click on this setting. Once you do this once in a project file, or as long as you have Cinema 4D open, it'll save your input. So basically, the first time you open up Cinema 4D, you'll have to do that. You'll have to input this number in, but after that, it'll save your input. So after that, you can actually just go to this button that I have up here in my UI and just click optimize, and you can do it a lot faster. Before we optimize anything, it's important that we do this first. So each mesh that we have enabled, we're going to want to go to the weight expression tag with it selected, and we want to shift click the set bind pose, and we have to do that with each of these that are attached to the skeleton, because for some reason when we go into polygon mode, the position is wonky. So it's very important that we set the bind pose of all of these. So I'm gonna again shift click set bind pose. We want to make sure the mesh of each of these are selected. Shift click set bind pose. We want to do that with the cloak as well, and then the hair. All right, so now we should have everything that we need. And now when we're in polygon mode and we're selecting these, they're actually in the correct position. Now we can actually optimize them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna select the mesh of the hair, optimize. As you can see, it optimized it a little bit. And then we're gonna go into our Fong tab and replace this with 90 degrees. All right, so that's the hair. Now we're gonna do the cloak. We're going to hit optimize, and we're just gonna do 90 degrees. As you can see, those squigglies showed up, which is why it's very important the angle is at 90 degrees. Optimize, 90 degrees. So before I optimize these gloves, as you can see here, there's actually a part of his arm attached to the gloves. This is actually just like an extra arm thing right here. So what I actually like to do is before I optimize these, I go into the polygon mode and I double click this part of the gloves and I just delete it because we don't need that attached to the gloves. We just want the actual glove part. We don't need the extra arm mesh. All right, so now we're gonna go back into our object mode, and again, we're going to hit optimize and then 90 degrees. All right, now we're gonna go over to our armor pieces. And as you can see here, these do not have any weight expression tags. So we do not need to worry about setting the bind pose for any of these. So we can just click optimize and then 90 degrees, optimize, 90 degrees. So everything's looking a little more smooth from when we first started, and we can actually see here that the ears no longer have that nasty seam, well, at least in the front. The next thing we're gonna do is we're going to attach these armor pieces to his body. First, let's bring this back here, and I actually like to select all of these and freeze the scale. Let me actually rename these real quick. So there's two ways of doing this. You can either go the lazy way, which is just clicking and dragging these under the orientation constraint that is supposed to be moving them around. So for example, we have a hood here. So this would actually be resting on his torso. If we do it the lazy way, we could just click and drag this under the lowest torso in the hierarchy, which would actually be the the top one controlling his torso, as you can see. Like I mentioned in my previous episode, you actually want to make sure that the visibility of all of these are toggled on when clicking and dragging these under. So let's actually just go ahead and do that for all of these. So visible in editor on, visible in renderer on. Once we drag this hood under the torso, it will move with the torso, and everything under torso will not affect it. So that is the easy way of linking it, and you can 100% do it this way. However, if you end up wanting to use WoW Model Viewer animations for your character, which I will be teaching in a later episode, you're going to want to do it this second way, which I'm going to go ahead and show you. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this orientation constraint hierarchy, and we're actually going to unlock these human male joints right here. So we're going to go down to our layers and unlock the joints layer. So what we want to do after we unlock our joints, we'll just start off with the hood. So we want to link the hood with the torso, the very top torso joint. So we're gonna open the joints hierarchy up, and we want to find the lowest torso, or in this case chest joint right here. Again, these will be a different name than your orientation constraint rig. So in this case, it'll be the chest, and you want to first select the hood and then control click the chest, and then you want to go up here to where it says bind, and you just want to click the button. So just to go ahead and test this out, we're going to minimize this, and we want to lock the joints layer again, and we're going to go ahead and move our torso. And as you can see here, it is linked to the torso. You're actually free to move the mesh itself wherever without affecting what controls it. I recommend not moving it under anything that you plan on animating though, because that can mess things up. I always just keep it in its own null. So now we're going to do this with the shoulder pads and belt. So we're gonna unlock the joints again, and we're going to, let me just drag this up. We're gonna do the right shoulder pad now. We're gonna reopen the joints, and we're gonna find our right shoulder. And for shoulder pads, always bind them to the top shoulder joint up here. You never want to bind them to the arm, because if you bind it to the top shoulder joint, you'll have control over the movement of the shoulder pads. Basically, you'll have more control over it. Again, with the right shoulder pad selected, we're going to control click the right shoulder joint, and we're going to click bind. We're going to unselect all those. Now we're going to do the left shoulder pad. So again, click the left shoulder pad, left shoulder joint, bind. And the last thing we're going to do is bind the belt to the waist joint. So again, click the belt, and then control click the hips, bind. I'm going to leave the rifle unbound for now, but if you want to go ahead and bind your weapon or whatever, you know, just basically repeat the steps that we just did. But I'm going to leave it unbound for now, just because I want to use this in a later video as an example. So we're actually just going to leave it unbound, and we're going to go ahead and lock our joints again. Also, one thing that is really, really important for WoW Model Viewer animations specifically, you do not want to freeze the position, the scale, the rotation, any of that. You don't want to freeze any of those coordinates with the joints themselves. I know I've mentioned this before, but it's very important that you do not mess with any of these. Just thought I would put that out there. I've learned a lot of this through many mistakes, so I'm trying to prevent as many of those as I can when making these videos. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and lock our joints back up, and I'm just gonna put this rifle under his torso constraint. I might choose a different weapon for this guy at some point, but this is just our example guy for now. So I'm gonna go ahead and freeze that, And we're gonna put that under the torso, and I'm just going to refreeze everything like so. So the last thing we're gonna do in this video is the final step to smoothing out the model, and we're going to basically be putting everything under subdivision surfaces. I'm gonna hide all the armor for now, and we're just gonna focus on the body. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go up here to this subdivision surface button, and we're gonna click it. All we want to do is change a few settings. So we're gonna go over to the object tab right here, and I like to set mine to 2 and 2, and then the UV, change the subdivide UVs to edge. And then we're going to click and drag our mesh, the mesh of our body, under that subdivision surface. So just to show you what that did, it made his model very smooth, like the edges very smooth. So just to show you the difference, a lot of the edges are much less sharp. It looks a lot cleaner, it looks nicer. I strongly recommend doing this with all of your models because it looks amazing. So now I'm just gonna click and drag that down here. And one thing to note is when you're posing and or animating, I strongly recommend actually disabling these or clicking this, this to an X while you're doing like the body pose itself, because subdivision surfaces can actually make your PC lag. If you don't have this issue, then don't worry about it. But for me, my personal experience, I only enable these when I'm adjusting like very specific parts of the body, like maybe the hands or the face, or I'm just trying to see how the final result might look. Yeah, I strongly recommend disabling these, especially since we're going to be using multiple subdivision surfaces. So yeah, and we're gonna add one for the hair next. So we're gonna hair, change this to 2, edge, and I always like to just click and drag all of the hair under this. And I'm gonna do the same for the cloaks and the armor. Not everything has to be subdivided, but I'd say most things do. But there are certain things that actually lose quality if you subdivide them. So, but in this case, all of these look pretty good. I'm actually gonna put this under extras. So now, as you can see here, he looks pretty good. One thing I will say is if your character has like a cloak, kind of like my character does, where, as you can see here, there's like this black stuff that we don't want. We want it to cut off where the actual texture is. You want to open the material of that texture, and where it says alpha right down here, we're gonna check that on, and we're gonna go back up to color real quick, and where it has the texture in color, we're gonna click and drag that over alpha, and then once the alpha window is pulled up, we're gonna click and drag that into the texture itself. And as you can see here, it actually cuts off where it's supposed to. Yeah, there's a certain armor with like fur, for example, where you'll have to do that. There's more that I would like to go over, but that'll have to be in future episodes. Again, this is supposed to be a basic rundown to help you get started. More will be taught in the future. I plan on teaching things like physics, pose morphs for facial expressions, a more in-depth discussion on materials, so you can get eye glows and such. But all of that will be in the future. So just keep an eye out, and I hope you guys enjoyed the first 3 episodes of my tutorial series. I will see you guys later.